Hello Senior 1. Today we have a grammar lesson about if conditionals, Unit 8 OL. First of all, before we start talking about the if conditionals, what is if conditional? Why do we use the if conditional structure? We use the if conditional cases to talk about a situation and an action or a result of this situation. So we have two clauses. We have the conditional clause or the condition clause, and we also have the result of this clause. So in the sentence, the weather is good today. The weather is good today is the situation or the condition. Go fishing is the result of this situation or the result of an action. But in our example, we have condition and result. The weather is good today is the condition. Go fishing is the result of this condition. So the right sentence should be, if the weather is good, we will go fishing. Here we have two clauses. It's a compound sentence. We have a condition, if the weather is good, we will go fishing is the result of this condition. The first case is the present simple. We use this structure or we use this form of the if conditional when we talk about facts that never change. If you add yellow to red, you get orange. If you go out in the rain, you catch the flu. Plants die if you don't water them. Notice if in the middle of the sentence, no commas. You get burnt if you touch fire. If he drives too fast, he crashes into a tree. Here, he drives too fast is the action. He drives too fast. He crashes into a tree is the result of this action. If you do your homework carelessly, you make a lot of mistakes. So we have, again, situation or action and the result of an action. What is the result? You make a lot of mistakes. What is the situation or the action? If you do your homework carelessly. If you put a bottle of water in the fridge, it cools. If you are absent for many times at school, you miss many lessons. So here notice the first clause, present simple, and the second clause, present simple, because it's always true. It's a fact. The situation is the same every time you do the action. If you add yellow to red, every time you get orange. So this is we call the zero conditional, or if present simple, present simple. Next, we have the first conditional. The first conditional is formed by present simple in the first clause or in the condition clause, and the result clause is formed by will or can or may plus infinitive. For example, when we talk about high possibility, if possibility, if you do not study, you won't pass the test. If you don't study, you won't pass the test. This happens about 99%. 99%, if you don't study, you won't pass the test. But sometimes there are some conditions when you don't study and something happens. Maybe the exam is easy, or some people cheat, which is wrong, but it happens. If he has got enough money, he can buy his car. He can buy his car if he has got enough money. There is a possibility. What will happen if you lose your keys? What are the possibilities of this situation? What may happen? What may happen? So I can answer this question. If I lose my keys, I will have a duplicate key, or I will stay with the neighbors for some time until I fix the problem, or I will go to my uncle to ask for help. So there are many possibilities. It's not a one dimension situation, like if you add red to yellow you get orange. If present simple, imperative form or request or advice. When we use the present simple in the first clause, you may form the second clause using imperative form or request or advice. For example, if you meet my father, don't tell him I was absent yesterday. So don't tell here is an imperative form, like an order. If you leave the class, don't forget to erase the board. Here, don't forget is like a reminder or a request or an imperative. If you want to get high marks, you should revise well. So can I use should in the present simple condition? Yes. Can I use the imperative or request? Yes. So it's not a must to use will or can or may in a complete sentence. You can start with a verb. You can start the second clause with a verb. Like don't tell him. Tell him that. Remember that. Blah blah blah. Okay? You give an order or request or ask for something or give advice. So in the second conditional, you can use the past simple would, could, might, and infinitive. If he died, his children will fight on the money. Can I use will here? No. I should change it into would. The second sentence, if I were a doctor, I would do charity operations. I'm imagining. I'm not a doctor and I cannot do charity operations. I could carry this box if I had muscles. So this is not the present situation. This is not the present situation. I'm just imagining it. I could carry this box if I had more muscles. The second conditional, as I said, for imaginations or advice. If I were you, I would get up earlier because you always arrive to school late. I advise you to study hard to get high marks. This is the meaning of if I were you. I advise you. It's the same meaning. You can use should and where starting the conditional clause in the second case. For example, should Jack read the chapter before class, he would have more questions for the teacher. Should Jack read the chapter before class, he would have more questions for the teacher. So if Jack, this means if Jack read the chapter, he would have. If Jack read, yes, past form. Past form plus would plus infinitive, would have more questions. You can also start with where. Where he's smarter, he would choose a better job. This means if he were smarter, he would choose a better job. Were he smarter, if he were smarter. Were he to work in many places, he would gain more experience. Were he to work, when you start the conditional clause with where, you can follow with subject plus to infinitive. But in the previous example, were he adjective. But if you have an action verb or a verb, you use were he to work. You use the full infinitive, to plus verb. If he worked in many places, he would gain more experience. It's the same meaning. So in the third conditional, which is talking about the contrary situation to the present, the only case talking about the past situation that did not happen, we can use the third conditional if had past participle plus the second clause subject would, could, might plus have plus past participle to express things that did not happen in the past. If they had told me about the meeting, I would have attended. This means they did not tell me and I did not attend the meeting. So how can we use the third conditional? We can use the third conditional for actions that did not happen in the past. We also use it to express facts that did not happen in the past. The food wouldn't have spoiled if you had put it in the fridge. If you had put the food in the fridge, it wouldn't have spoiled. There are other alternatives for if. One of these alternatives is without. We use without instead of a negative condition, if not. And instead of saying if plus negative condition, we use it with all cases. For example, if you hadn't annoyed the bear, it wouldn't have eaten you. Without annoying. Here, I replaced if you hadn't annoyed with without annoying. I didn't say without not annoying. And the second clause is the same, no change. Without annoying the bird, he wouldn't have been eaten, and the last sentence is in the passive form. He is the object. So there are alternatives of negative conditional clauses like unless, but for, without, if it weren't for, if it hadn't been for, provided, providing, as long as, provided that, and each expression has a certain structure. For example, unless plus affirmative sentence, but it gives a negative meaning. But for plus noun, without plus noun or verb ing, if it weren't for plus noun, and the second clause should be complete. If it hadn't been for plus noun, provided, providing, as long as, provided that, plus full sentence. For example, unless you do a sport, you won't lose weight. Notice after unless you have full sentence. But for doing a sport, you have an ing or a gerund form. But for doing a sport, you won't lose weight. Without doing a sport, you won't lose weight. If it weren't for my doctor's assistance, this is a noun phrase, I wouldn't recover. If it hadn't been for their support, I wouldn't have recovered. Notice here, if it hadn't been for. This is the third conditional. As long as you practice the language, you will get better every day, as long as followed by full sentence. Providing you practice the language, you get better. Providing followed by full sentence, right? Like provided that, providing as long as. Let's look at some examples for practice. The first one, he could help the old woman in case of having money without your assistance. So I used the noun. Without your assistance, I wouldn't have finished my project. Unless she wears a coat, you would catch cold. Unless she wears a coat, she would catch cold. Should you eat vegetables and fruits, you won't or you wouldn't feel weak. So you have to follow the structure, you have to know the structure of each alternative of if to manage rewriting the sentence. In case of, plus the noun or the verb ing, without, plus the noun or verb ing, unless it should be followed by affirmative sentence. Should you eat vegetables, you wouldn't feel weak. Here we started with should in case of advice for the second conditional case. The last one, if I had had a car, I would have given. Notice here had is repeated because had, the first had is an auxiliary and the second had is a past participle form. So this is the third case, right? If I had had a car, I would have given you a ride. But if I had a car, I would give you a ride, changing from the second conditional to the third conditional. So you have to notice the verb had in the last sentence. Thank you.